Okay, our next segment is Kubi from Gattaca and Titan Relay, who's going to tell us about a new MEV-boost relay that they're rolling out. Kubi, whenever you're ready, please share your screen. Great. And you can get started whenever you want.
Sounds good. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Cool. So hi everyone. I'm Kubi. I'm one of the co-founders of Gattaca, mostly known for running the Titan block builder. And as Izzy said, I'm here today to talk about the relay that we're launching. But before we get into it, I just wanted to go quickly into a bit of background information about ourselves, specifically Gattaca as a company. So we are a crypto native team, small team of mostly engineers, and we actually have our origins as a proprietary trading firm. So initially, we used to run trading strategies across centralized exchanges, and then later across decentralized exchanges, doing things like liquidations, backrunning, and a bit of CX-DEX arbitrage as well. Now, as everyone probably knows, with the rise of MEV, the community pretty much realized that this was essentially having centralization pressures on the network, and mostly led through the efforts of flashbots. There were a few market structure changes that came along the way. The most recent ones essentially being MEV-boost, so post-merge having an out-of-protocol PBS implementation. So what we realized as a company, and something that Vitalik actually stated a while ago in his one of his posts, I think it was Endgame, was that having centralized infrastructure within the bounds of a decentralized network is actually not a bad thing, especially if the validator set remains decentralized and there's enough protocol level oversight. And it can actually be beneficially, specifically from the perspective of centralized infrastructure having increased efficiency and more throughput. So from that perspective, we essentially started shifting most of our focus onto running infrastructure and leveraging basically all the capabilities that we had built up running like a very competitive trading team to run infrastructure that can, within the bounds of a decentralized network, essentially drive additional efficiency, and most importantly, run neutral infrastructure. So this is a very important value that we have as a company. So along this journey, our first step was the Titan block builder, which probably most of you know because we indirectly interface with most of you guys. And Titan was essentially, the block builder was launched in April earlier this year. And now we are actually one of the largest block builders, and specifically the largest neutral block builder actually on Ethereum. And the next step essentially along a journey is the relay, which I want to talk to you guys about a bit more. So what is the Titan relay? So first of all, it is a completely new relay implementation written in Rust. So it's not a fork and it's not a port. It is completely rewritten from scratch. And that allowed us to do a couple of things. So first of all, we designed the relay from the ground up to be modular and generic. So this means from one perspective that like everything, for example, like the database that you want to use in the backend, how you want to store your bits, what kind of simulation infrastructure you want to use in the backend, that is all modular and pluggable. So if you want to use MySQL or Postgres or MongoDB, that's all plug and play. Also things like doing simulations locally within your own instance, or doing RPC calls to do simulations, that is all nicely abstracted away. Other things that we support from day one is optimistic relaying, for example, and also overall the entire code base was essentially designed with like 3 principles in mind. So that is low latency, redundancy, and geo distribution. And so low latency specifically on the critical path. So the path from essentially a block builder submitting bits to a relay to like a validator fetching the bit through get header that's highly optimized for that path. Then we redundancy from the sense that any header that we actually serve to any node operator or validator goes through a process that allows additional redundancy. So first of all, within the process, there's like additional persistency, but also the relay is essentially written in such a way that the payloads are distributed across different clusters, and that is built within the code, such that even if a process were to die and things like that, the payload will never get lost. And whenever you actually, the node operator or slash validator calls get payload, there will never be a missed slot, and that payload is actually then distributed both to the P2P layer, but also back to the node operator. And then lastly, hand in hand, obviously, with that goes geo distribution, not just from a redundancy and fault tolerance perspective, but also from the perspective of additional efficiency. So both from a latency perspective, but also from the perspective that there are certain node operators that run in geographic regions that are not well served by current relays. So all of that is baked into the code base. And another thing that I wanted to mention is that it is a new code base, but it's 100% compliant with the current MEV-boost protocol, which means from the outside, both as a block builder and as a node operator or validator, nothing changes. So integration is basically seamless. And lastly, it is also open source. So we're going to release the source code pretty soon. And it's also going to be released under non-restrictive licenses, which means, which is also why we designed the code base in a modular way, that we very much encourage other community members to innovate on the code base, but also just repurpose it in whatever means they desire to. And then lastly, one thing is also that we essentially also already are starting to bake in additional features. Initially, there are things that are more builder focused. So for example, like higher cancellation guarantees and faster inclusion confirmation, but we have actually like a bunch of other features on the roadmap as well, which would be pretty interesting to roll out. So this is just like a high-level summary of the code base itself. But in addition to developing the code base, we are also actually gonna run and operate instances of this relay. So on one hand, this relay once live is gonna be open to all block builders. So this relay is not meant to be just serving Titan block builder. Us being a block builder helped us to really understand some of the needs more downstream in the supply chain, and also craft and design the relay in such a way. But it's going to be open to all block builders. And as I mentioned before, obviously it's open source. And so we encourage other operators to also use the code base. Additionally, as I mentioned before, it is designed in a way to be run geo-distributed. And we also will be running it in a geo-distributed way, most likely initially focusing on regions that are underserved, and then generally just running it across regions that most node operators operate out of.
Kubi, do you mind if I ask really quickly which geos you guys have currently identified as underserved?
So more research and like more communication with existing operators required, but based on our understanding, it is mainly currently in Asia, because the amount of stake that is there is quite significant today already. But also, I think there are more node operators now popping up in, I think, Latin America as well as Africa. But I'm not sure like what the actual distribution is today. So we'll be exploring that further. Probably you guys can give some more feedback on that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'll make sure to get our node operators to bug you. Indeed, especially Asia and Asia Pacific and Latin America are, I would say, the geos where the slot times are so burdened by the relays not being close enough that a lot of node operators are relying on things like min bid, basically end up having higher profitability overall, which is like a little bit counterintuitive if you think about it, just because of the amount of missed slots.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes, and so then just a few notes in regards to why we decided to implement this code base and also start operating a relay ourselves. So one is that it is basically our first step, us becoming a more significant infrastructure provider on Ethereum, to also start contributing more to the community, which is also the reason why we decided to open source it. The other thing is that we have been able to develop quite competitive infrastructure. And so we want to essentially also help push the boundaries on the performance on the relay front. I know that existing teams, for example, the ultrasound team has done like some great stuff on that front already. And we essentially just want to follow those footsteps and help push the boundaries further. Another thing is relay diversity. I guess as most of you know, the other only relay code base, which was Dreamboat, operated by Block Native, is no longer live since they left the market. And so I think now is even a higher need for there to be more diversity, not just in terms of node operators themselves, but also in terms of the code base that is out there, which just overall will add to the robustness of the ecosystem. Then it is also somewhat of a defensive move from our end. So relay monetization is still like a really big question mark in the community. And so as a larger infrastructure provider, we essentially want to ensure that no matter what happens to existing incumbents, that there's at least going to be one relay operator out there that's going to run very robust and very competitive infrastructure. So that was also one of our key motivations. And then on the other hand, as I mentioned before, so being a block builder, there are features that we want to offer as a builder, specifically because we are one of the only larger block builder that is neutral. Our vision essentially is to be able to unlock additional value through like offering different kinds of services on top of block building directly, which requires some support on the relay level, depending on what the service and the feature is. And so essentially by operating a relay ourselves and also open sourcing the code base, we think we essentially can also drive adoption faster with some of these efforts. And then lastly, the design space overall is pretty interesting and open already as a block builder. And I think more so even on the relay level. So again, this just opens the door for us to that. Then what is the current status? So we are currently already live in private beta on both mainnet and Gurley. So we've been doing lots of testing internally. And next week, we're actually going to start opening up to external parties, initially only on Gurley. Which is also one of the motivations why we wanted to join the call and present ourselves to you guys. So we are really interested for more node operators to start connecting with us once we are live next week. And so if anyone is interested, please reach out. So here are our details. So you can find our website, Discord, Twitter, but also just feel free to just message me directly. So I also included my private email as well as my private Twitter, and my DMs are open. So you guys can just contact us directly. Also, if obviously anyone is interested in actually contributing to the relay code itself, always happy to chat. So please reach out. And yeah, that's it. Try to keep it short and sweet. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. That was pretty comprehensive. We already have one question in chat from Sven. When Haleski?
So this is basically a demand question. So I think our operations team is pretty fast in spinning up additional infrastructure. So if there's enough demand, we're happy to spin something up.
So if you stick around for Will's presentation, which is next, actually, Lido contributors are in the middle of migrating the Lido testnet from Gurley to Haleski in the coming months.
Okay.
But Haleski will basically be the network where the next DVT testnet happens. And one of the main things that we want to test on DVT for this testnet, which we didn't get a chance to test in the previous one, is of course to make sure that blinded blocks, so basically compatibility with MEV-boost, works as expected. Currently, there are no relays on Haleski that I know of, or public use ones at least. So if you guys were to be one of the first relays, you would definitely be featured prominently, let's say, in the results of the testnet. If for no other reason, because you'd be enabling it to test all of the things that we need to test.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, we'll definitely get on it.
And I'm guessing the other question from the node operators maybe, so the way that let's say MEV-boost relay vetting works for the Lido protocol is that there's a call for relays thread on the forum, so where relays are asked to basically come and publicly say, hey, we're ready for node operators that use the Lido protocol to test out this relay, and first it starts on Gurley. So when do you anticipate to have kind of like an open beta of the relay on Gurley?
So as I mentioned, so that will be next week. And so as soon as we are live, we will then probably also just post in the forum. And I think there's a checklist and things that you guys are looking for. So we'll just probably provide all the info there.
That's great. Thank you very much. Look forward to the post next week then.
Yep.